Sacred space for God. When you divide up the inheritance of the land, you must set aside part of the land as sacred space for God, approximately 7 miles long by 6 miles wide, all of it holy ground. Within this rectangle, reserve a 750-foot square for the sanctuary with a 75-foot buffer zone surrounding it. Mark off within the sacred reserve a section 7 miles long by 3 miles wide. The sanctuary with its Holy of Holies will be placed there. This is where the priests will live, those who lead worship in the sanctuary and serve God there. Their houses will be there along with the holy place. To the north of the sacred reserve, an area roughly 7 miles long and 2¼ miles wide will be set aside as land for the villages of the Levites who administer the affairs of worship in the sanctuary. To the south of the sacred reserve, measure off a section 7 miles long and about 1.5 miles wide for the city itself, an area held in common by the whole family of Israel. The prince gets the land abutting the 7-mile east and west borders of the central sacred square, extending eastward toward the Jordan and westward toward the Mediterranean. This is the prince's possession in Israel. My princes will no longer bully my people, running roughshod over them. They'll respect the land as it has been allotted to the tribes. This is the message of God, the Master: I've put up with you long enough, princes of Israel. Quit bullying and taking advantage of my people. Do what's just and right for a change. Use honest scales, honest weights, and honest measures. Every pound must have 16 ounces. Every gallon must measure 4 quarts. The ounce is the basic measure for both. And your coins must be honest, no wooden nickels. Everyone in the land must contribute. These are the prescribed offerings you are to supply: 1/60th part of your wheat, 1/60th part of your barley, 100th part of your oil, 1 sheep out of every 200 from the lush pastures of Israel. These will be used for the grain offerings, burnt offerings, and peace offerings for making the atonement sacrifices for the people. Decree of God, the Master. Everyone in the land must contribute to these special offerings that the prince in Israel will administer. It's the prince's job to provide the burnt offerings, grain offerings, and drink offerings at the holy festivals, the new moons, and the Sabbaths, all the commanded feasts among the people of Israel. Sin offerings, grain offerings, burnt offerings, and peace offerings for making atonement for the people of Israel are his responsibility. This is the message from God, the Master: on the first day of the first month, take an unblemished bull calf and purify the sanctuary. The priest is to take blood from the sin offerings and rub it on the doorposts of the temple, on the 4 corners of the ledge of the altar, and on the gate entrance to the inside courtyard. Repeat this ritual on the 7th day of the month for anyone who sins without knowing it. In this way you make atonement for the temple. On the 14th day of the first month, you will observe the Passover, a feast of 7 days. During the feast you will eat bread made without yeast. On Passover, the prince supplies a bull as a sin offering for himself and all the people of the country. Each day for each of the 7 days of the feast, he will supply 7 bulls and 7 rams unblemished as a burnt offering to God, and also each day a male goat. He will supply about 5½ gallons of grain offering and a gallon of oil for each bull and each ram. On the 15th day of the 7th month, and on each of the 7 days of the feast, he is to supply the same materials for sin offerings, burnt offerings, grain offerings, and oil. Message from God. The Master: the gate of the inside courtyard on the east is to be shut on the 6 working days, but open on the Sabbath. It is also to be open on the new moon. The prince will enter through the entrance area of the gate complex and stand at the gateposts as the priests present his burnt offerings and peace offerings while he worships there on the porch. He will then leave, but the gate won't be shut until evening. On Sabbaths and new moons, the people are to worship before God at the outside entrance to that gate complex. The prince supplies for God the burnt offering for the Sabbath, 6 unblemished lambs and an unblemished ram. The grain offering to go with the ram is about 5½ gallons plus a gallon of oil, and a handful of grain for each lamb. At the new moon he is to supply a bull calf, 6 lambs, and a ram, all without blemish. He will also supply 5½ gallons of grain offering and a gallon of oil for both ram and bull, and a handful of grain offering for each lamb. When the prince enters, he will go through the entrance vestibule of the gate complex and leave the same way. But when the people of the land come to worship God at the commanded feasts, those who enter through the north gate will exit from the south gate, and those who enter through the south gate will exit from the north gate. You don't exit the gate through which you enter, but through the opposite gate. The prince is to be there, mingling with them, going in and out with them. At the festivals and the commanded feasts, the appropriate grain offering is 5½ gallons, with a gallon of oil for the bull and ram and a handful of grain for each lamb. When the prince brings a freewill offering to God, whether a burnt offering or a peace offering, the east gate is to be opened for him. He offers his burnt or peace offering the same as he does on the Sabbath. Then he leaves, and after he is out, the gate is shut. Every morning you are to bring a yearling lamb unblemished for a burnt offering to God. Also, every morning bring a grain offering of about a gallon of grain with a quart or so of oil to moisten it. Presenting this grain offering to God is standard procedure. The lamb, the grain offering, and the oil for the burnt offering are a regular daily ritual. A message from God, the Master: if the prince deeds a gift from his inheritance to one of his sons, it stays in the family. But if he deeds a gift from his inheritance to a servant, the servant keeps it only until the year of liberation, the Jubilee year. After that, it comes back to the prince. His inheritance is only for his sons. It stays in the family. The prince must not take the inheritance from any of the people, dispossessing them of their land. He can give his sons only what he himself owns. None of my people are to be run off their land. Then the man brought me through the north gate into the holy chambers assigned to the priests and showed me a back room to the west. He said, "This is the kitchen where the priests will cook the guilt offering and sin offering and bake the grain offering so that they won't have to do it in the outside courtyard and endanger the unprepared people out there with the holy." He proceeded to take me to the outside courtyard and around to each of its 4 corners. In each corner I observed another court. In each of the 4 corners of the outside courtyard were smaller courts 60 by 45 feet, each the same size. On the inside walls of the courts was a stone shelf, and beneath the shelves, hearths for cooking. He said, "These are the kitchens where those who serve in the temple will cook the sacrifices of the people."